explore is chemistry in a more technical sense in male-female relationships than is common. So let's break it down. Within every individual, there is a masculine and feminine pole. And so some people are female, some people are male, and both men and women have a feminine and a masculine pole. Now, to step back a little bit, we do invent these ideas, and so and we can often look at the polarity and the duality that's part of our human experience in a variety of different ways. But one of them is that we have the balance of masculine and feminine energy. Another is the right and the left, north, south, etc. There's all these tensions, these extreme opposites. And so some of the correlations between masculine and feminine are right and left hemisphere of the brain. Within any relationship, there is the masculine pole in an interaction. For example, right now, I'm the speaker, and should you choose to be, you are the listener. So in this dynamic, I'm in the masculine pole, and you, male or female, are in the feminine pole. Now, culturally, there have been 10,000 cultures throughout history. In recent recorded history, there is a very strong bias for the masculine. So the feminine is marginalized and the masculine is overemphasized. And there is a reason for this. The masculine principle is more dissociative, more sociopathic. On the empathic, sociopathic continuum, the masculine is more sociopathic than the feminine. And men who lead with their masculine sides are more capable of sociopathic behavior without empathy, than women leading with their empathic sides or men leading with their empathic sides. But in the cultural bias in the last, let's say, 4,000 years, the value that a culture places on a human being that is able to be dissociative, sociopathic, and in that sociopathic state be more effective at killing, surviving, outmaneuvering either a business opponent or a legal opponent or a power opponent or a war opponent, a military opponent, has been valued. And because of the stereotyping of men and women, the idea that women couldn't possibly be sociopathic and were timid little things, and all that. So the combination of the culture valuing the masculine traits, and in particular, if you look at the Roman Catholic Church's history over the last few thousand years, adventurers, but also sociopathic men. When they arrived in the Dominican Republic and found men and women living peacefully, with women having equal rights to the men, no domestic violence compared to 1 in 3 American couples experiencing domestic violence 400 years later. This is a culture with no domestic violence, so clearly more advanced than our own 400 years ago in terms of well-being. We've advanced on the technological and material front. So they had fewer possessions, but less violence, and a great deal more happiness. And we traded that, just as, it was the same trade-off the Catholic Church made when they wrote back and they said, there is some gold in the area. What should we do? And they were instructed to enslave the peoples with threat of force. So they chopped off heads and feet and raped men and women, enslaving them to get gold for the Catholic Church. And they left having the favor of the Catholic Church and with gold. And they were honored by our culture. And we left as spiritually bankrupt as we arrived. And it's really a remarkable culture that experiences hospitality. If you read some of the letters from the earliest settlers, the Spanish were welcomed with open arms and with hospitality. There was food, comfort, company, sex, music, equality, safety, beauty, in abundance. And this is all feminine terrain. But gold, the symbol of the acquisition of more power and possession, is more of a masculine pole. And we traded feminine well-being for gold. The feminine is devalued. But you have to think about the temperament, the personality, and the belief system of a human being who would do that. Like, what does it take for a human being to be offered sensitivity, presence, comfort, etc., or to commit human atrocities for power and gold, and to feel we're better off with the power and gold than with the love, the hospitality, the warmth, the presence? What does it take for someone to have to even think about that? And it obviously takes being more like us, which tends to be a more northern and western culture than a more southern culture. And there's a couple of different reasons for that, but one of them is scarcity. So scarcity is the belief it won't last. Someone will take it. This isn't valuable. Now, if you've come out of the Middle Ages and slavery and burning at the stake and you're going to be burned in hell, and you've got preachers telling you you've got to do exactly what you're told or you are worthless, and you've been treated on an emotional level as if you're nothing. And what I mean by that is, on an emotional level, whether you're born a king or a peasant or a woman or a man, you all have the same feelings. Everyone likes being treated with respect. No one likes being treated rudely, blah, blah, blah. Emotions are equal. But birth, wealth, rank, weaponry are not equal. If you happen to be born in this family, you're a king. If you happen to be born in this family, you're a peasant. So emotionally you're equal, but in terms of possession, given the social and cultural hierarchy of the time, where you are born matters a great deal. And one of the things that chauvinistic cultures have maintained for thousands of years is that when you are born with masculine attributes, the right family, the right money, etc., you are more valuable than when you are born without those attributes. And these are masculine attributes. Now, it's interesting, though, how this ties back into the feminine, because the message is you're more valuable if you are born with these attributes. But who wants to be valuable? Our emotions. We want to be valued. We are all born equally emotional, and we all want to be valued. All of us want to be valued. And so if the culture says that I'm more valuable because my last name is Richard, and I have X bunches of gold, and so is more valuable than me because their last name is Paul and they have more gold. I want to be as valuable as Paul. And see, if we go outside the cultural chauvinism, Richard is as valuable as Paul, as Mary, as Sally, etc. Richard is perfectly valuable. But within the bias of the cult, it's not the case. You have to get more gold to be valuable. You have to marry. You have to conquer. You have to have more land to be valued. And so, if we understand that every single thing we do is emotional, but that in a massive blind spot, we have denied the value of our equal emotional state. Women are less valuable than men because they're more emotional. Men's position and power is more important than their emotions. If we understand that, This person is more valuable than that person because of who they can connect you to, because of what they know, because of what they can do for you, because of what can happen in your life. Then suddenly power brokering and everything that's connected to that. Oh, this person wants gold, this person wants Facebook likes, this person wants... So we've got to secure that so that our emotional value can go up. And in the truest sense, since we all have the same feelings and emotional needs, etc., this stuff is irrelevant. But when we agree emotionally to buy into the cultural narrative that says X number of gold, then suddenly when you have the choice to, murder and rape and butcher, literally hundreds of thousands of peaceful and hospitable people to get gold so that you will be more important than the person who didn't get the gold. And you've been raised in a culture where how kind you were to your wife didn't mean anything, but how much gold you had meant everything. And so you don't recognize the value of what this tribe of people, what this group of people has. We don't even pause to feel into it. It's just do what it takes to go up in value so that we will feel less worthless. And it's an interesting trade-off, and it's one that we make almost every day as we put accumulating efficiently, in many cases well beyond our need, ahead of who we are as human beings with one another. And as we treat people based on, oh, they've got a car, let's be more polite to them, than this person with the motorbike, oh, and they have a Rolls Royce, they must be really important. I want to be really important too, so what do I have to do to get a Rolls Royce? Well, I could be nice to this neighbor and tell them that this land is unbuildable, but if they don't know it and I sell it to them at the price they'll pay if they don't know, I could get a Rolls Royce and then I'd be important too. And so this is where the empathic person says, that doesn't feel very nice. I wouldn't like to be treated that way. And the sociopathic person says, if I can get away with it, I'll do it in a heartbeat. I don't care about them. I want to be valuable. And so the sociopath is more controllable by power structures than the empath. The empath cares about people. The sociopath doesn't. And so it's incredibly easy to get a country or a culture's need met from and with a sociopath. They just have to say, we'll give you this government position, we'll give you this bribe if you secure X for us. Meaning kill, murder, rape the tribe's people right and left, doesn't matter. If you will bring in 10 tons of gold a month, you will be knighted and rewarded. A sociopath doesn't have to think twice and just says done. An empath says, what about those people? Well, what does the church say? Don't worry about them. They're not real human beings. The empath says, well, they feel like human beings to me. They look like human beings. Their eyes have as much emotion as yours or mine. These are God's people. And the sociopath in the church, they don't want that. It's like, no, kill them. Do what you have to do to bring back this gold for the church. So you have this tension, and power structures have always written history in a favorable way to them. And so, the power structures of chauvinism and that enforce chauvinism don't say, for example, we are overvaluing the masculine trait because it suits us and it's irrational. I.e., it's irrational to value granite countertops over domestic harmony. It's irrational because if you do the equation, harmony on the one side and countertops, and I make this joke just because as a contractor I'm constantly seeing people disrupt their lives and spend thousands of dollars to upgrade their countertops to granite countertops as a sign of progress. And the same people are very rarely investing in therapy, books, reading, vacations to bring up the quality of their family relationships at the same level. So countertops are still winning in investment. And so the question is, if you spend, let's call this a $4,000 expense, if you spend $4,000 in the level of time and effort finding a good granite countertop installer, meeting them at the house, picking the colors and all that, or spend $4,000 just asking your family, what would bring you peace? What would make you feel happy? What would make you feel significant and important in this family? What do we need? Like, where could we go? And bringing the relationships together. The statistics say that often the harmony is free. I mean, often what's really needed is to be heard. Just as one example, just 3 or 4 hours of just, I hear you, tell me more. I hear you, tell me more. Tell me more. Why did you think that? I see. Tell me more. Tell me more. 3 or 4 hours of listening, for example, may bring more relief and well-being than the 4K thing, which means $1,000 an hour. Yet the person doesn't have time to listen. They don't have time to learn how to listen. They get all fidgety and upset at the idea of being so inefficient as to take time to listen for 3 or 4 hours. 20 minutes is a big deal. And yet they'll go 3 or 4 hours shopping the best price of a flat screen, and I gotta do this, oh, it's $20 cheaper over on Amazon, but I didn't do the research. 3 or 4 hours later, they've got the very best price on some little gadget. And no one in their family feels heard. So it's the same trade-off, but it's important to kind of understand its historical origins. The cultures that we came from and the trade-offs of those power structures in black and white, letters back and forth from bishops and priests and senior figures in the Catholic Church. That is not returned. I mean, it's The Catholic Church is now one of the richest, organizations in the world. And how much of that is going back where that gold was looted from peaceful people who were more Christian in the truest sense of the word than the looters coming to teach them about Christianity, in terms of being hospitable and treating people like your neighbor and all of that. So if we understand the chauvinism that doesn't want to honor the fact that our feminine side. Now, so what am I talking about when I say the feminine side? So, as I alluded to, I'm the speaker, masculine, you're the listener, feminine, in this interaction, whether you're male or female. And that's the case if a woman is talking, she's in the masculine pole, she's asserting. Person listening, male or female, is in the feminine pole, listening, teaching, and learning, similarly, which is the masculine and the feminine pole. Giving and receiving, which is the masculine and the feminine pole. Because it's just, it's a pole that represents the tension between two opposites that come together as one. And it's important to understand that they do, because if you try and receive a gift that isn't given, it's pretty hard. If you try and give a gift without anyone choosing to receive it, it's pretty hard. If you try and talk when no one's listening, it's pretty hard. So they fit together as integrated poles. This is where the duality becomes, the unity. The feminine and the masculine together create chemistry, the flow of giving and receiving. It's a pair. You try and give without receiving, you try and receive without giving. It doesn't work. There's no chemistry. Teach without a student. Learn without a teacher. It's hard. So if we understand that, the culture likes to take a battery. See, science, when it builds batteries, it says this is the plus, this is the negative. And no scientist worth their salts is going to say the negative is more valuable than the positive is more valuable than the negative. No. And they build batteries with equal positive and negative charge. Otherwise, there's a lot of waste. Now, what the culture does, though, is it says the negative charge is not that important. But the positive charge, that's important. And it's worth a moment, if you've ever been around a chauvinistic man, a chauvinistic woman, a chauvinistic dogmatic figure of any kind who's preaching, that they are in essence more important, or that science is more important than this or that or the other. It is absurd. And to a scientist, a true scientist, not a chauvinist, this is obvious. You ask any scientist, would you build a battery that had a 20% negative charge and an 80% positive charge? They look at you as if you're nuts. Why waste 80% of the battery? You've got to get it 50-50 or there's waste. You ask the same scientists, if you could have a plug, an electrical plug, without an electrical outlet, or you could have an outlet without an electrical plug, which would you have? I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't get electricity until you get an electrical outlet and an electrical plug. And they flow. The power is in the flow, and that comes from balance. Now, you ask Americans, would you rather be the teacher or the student? See, most of us are taught that it's more important to be the teacher. But not scientifically. This is a cultural overlay on a polarity. One could easily say that without a high quality of learning, without high quality of attention and willingness on the part of the students, that the teacher is absolutely ineffective, has no value at all. In other words, put a teacher in front of a bunch of chairs, which are absolutely incapable of learning anything, and the teacher has zero value to the culture. Because the chairs are just as stupid after 10,000 hours of lectures as they were before. Well, to the degree that the student's attention and presence is downgraded to a point where they're forgetting it, not mattering, not respecting, not learning anything, the teacher has no more value than if it was teaching chairs. And so, but this is the kind of behavior we would expect from students if we say, you're the student, you're not as important. It's like, why would you invest time being an excellent student if you're just not as important as the teacher? You want to be the teacher. Same is true with the speaker. If you're not paying attention to what I'm saying, I have zero value in terms of a speaker. My value comes from you. Without you, this is pointless. And I can say, well, it's not entirely pointless because I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm fiddling around with these ideas, I'm in here with you, listening, exploring, etc., and I'm learning something. So my feminine side, the one who's listening to what I'm saying, is learning from my masculine side, the one that's trying to couch these impulses in different ways. So the truth is, men are as equal as women, and you look at that equation. Culturally, we've had thousands of years. It's only been a few hundred years with women having the right to vote in the United States. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And this was big debate and all that. So, but again, that's the culture talking. But what's the science? Men are more important than women. Where did the men come from? Could men exist without women? See, because if men are so important and we can't exist, meaning we were all inside of a woman. In other words, how can you say, to use that a plant is more valuable than a seed? Well, however valuable the plant is, that makes the seed that valuable. Because if there isn't a seed, you don't get the plant. However valuable the man is, the most important man implicitly is connected to the woman that gave birth to him and to the woman who gave birth to the woman who gave birth to him, etc., etc., etc. Which means there's no equation that can say scientifically, culturally, there's all kinds of stuff. We have blind spots. We just shut off this eye and ignore that, and then we focus on this stuff over here. So we've got a chauvinistic culture that tries to tell us that men are more important than women, that thinking is more important than feeling, that speaking is more important than listening, that having things and the right things is more important than our emotional well-being, that having power over is more important than the skill of goodwill, all kinds of chauvinistic messages. That teaching is more important than the student, that if you give, that's good, if you receive, that's weak, i.e. feminine. that if you're in control, that's good. If you surrender, that's not very good. So this is the pole. Now, how do we get into this situation as highly civilized people, etc., where, let's take the United States, where 1 in 3 domestic relationships involve violence, and where almost every American, let's just focus on American men right now, are compulsive in some area. Could be tobacco, could be drinking, could be gambling, could be lying, could be working, could be pornography, could be beating. Doesn't matter. Compulsive just means that there's an overwhelming need to do it that is independent of the objective analysis of well-being. The compulsive worker, on his anniversary, when he's got $200,000 in the bank, $1 million home, and is 60 years old, and is just doing fine on a business level, will be late for the anniversary dinner so that he can finish that last little piece and be totally done, or just go until he absolutely can't avoid his wife's irritating calls anymore, and it has to go. This is compulsion. What I mean by compulsion is intelligent assessment. An intelligent human being does an equation and says, what will make me and the people in my life happy? And if that is going and having dinner, at a lovely restaurant and enjoying some of that, power and freedom and money, then that's what they'll do. And if there's no money in the bank and this and that and the other, and they need to make money, then that's what they'll do. And if they're much happier in a smaller house with less stress and burden, then that's what they'll do. An intelligent person will spend their time, money, and energy in a way that will create the most well-being for them. An addictive person will stay up all night binging on movies, etc., to avoid the feeling of dread or of adrenaline exhaustion that they're afraid of. An addictive person will watch this porn, 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 until they're dissociated and lost, and feel somehow safer because they don't have to feel. In other words, compulsion has to do with avoiding emotion. What emotion? Trauma in particular. Overwhelming pain, shame, childhood incidents, etc. In what area? A lot of it is in the feminine terrain. And so if we look at the feminine pole within each of us as men, the part of us that receives, the part of us that needs, the part of us that is diffuse, the part of us that listens, the part of us that feels, the part of us that is in the moment, the part of us that is learning, the part of us that is empathic with ourselves and others, the part of us that shares, the part of us that belongs, the part of us that is open and innocent, the part of us that trusts, the part of us that is emotional, the part of us that is sensitive and responsive. If we look at how our culture and our family, school system, etc., treats this part of us, the feminine part in every man, we do not receive a single day of emotional education in our entire school. Our culture thinks algebra is more relevant to the average person's life than emotional literacy. So let's do the math, right? I mean, there must be a good reason for this. Surely, like, there must be 99% of us all going out and frantically using algebra every day, and if we didn't do it right, our lives would come to an end. But no, there's less than 2% of us that ever use algebra. Okay, so then let's look at, surely we're hordes of, people, 99% of human beings just never need emotions or never need to understand them and never need to know what to do with them and anything like that. But no, we're all dealing with emotions every single day from birth to death. Seems like it might be worth studying. Not only that, there is no action, including chauvinism, racism, beating, etc., that is not fueled by emotion. Thirdly, whether we are happy or not with having $1 billion or nothing is determined by our emotions, not the nothing or the billion. We have suicidal billionaires that feel absolutely miserable, and we have very happy people living on the street. In other words, there is no rational equation that says emotions are not 100 times more relevant than algebra. But you see, we're not a rational culture. We're a dogmatic culture. And algebra is masculine. It is a left brain skill, whereas emotions are feminine. And we are dogmatic in our masculine bias as a culture. So your children, just like you and I, will receive zero emotional training and literacy in school. And some of them are going to go through the same algebra and crap and all that. There's nothing wrong with them. And yes, they're great skills. It's just, if we had to decide between learning whaling, how to kill whales, and how to program exceptional apps that help bring awareness to the world, what is the most likely thing? What's more likely, important to learn? Well, we don't have any trouble saying who needs whaling these days. Apps are hot. But we have a huge trouble saying who needs algebra these days. Emotions are even hotter than apps. You and I are using emotions. And you and I are having feelings about what I'm saying right now. And you and I are emotionally illiterate as a function of the deadpan denial of emotions as 1/3 of who we are. Having anything relevant to contribute to our life other than to be stuffed, shamed, betrayed, etc., etc. So the first message we receive as men is, your emotions are not worth studying. Now this is a pretty powerful message, because you're thinking, am I really going to need algebra? That's what I thought. It's like, sure, division, but even there, we've got calculators. It's like, and the teacher's like, no, you are going to need this stuff. It's like, no. But if they'd said, wow, let's study jealousy, let's study romance, let's study what destroys relationship, I wouldn't have said, I'm never going to need that. I'd look around me at my parents' defunct marriage and I'd say, hell yes, bring it on. But that's not what they do, is it? So we get the message that algebra, geometry, geography, trigonometry is all more valuable than our emotions. And some of these things are so arcane and absurd for 99% of the population that we're really saying emotions aren't worth shit. So this is the first message. Now, this hits home in a variety of ways. We train every driver prior to giving them a driver's license. But we don't train parents prior to allowing them to have complete control of their child's life. The message again, the child, which is a more feminine state. If you have to say the adult or the child, which is the more feminine, it's the innocent, the trust, the need of the child is in the feminine pole. So it has less right than the parent in our culture, the masculine. You will do what I tell you to do. You shall love your parents. These are rights to the parent, not the child. There's no commandment, thou shalt love thy child. Why not? God never thought of it? This chauvinism runs very deep. Protect the power structure. Sacrifice the feminine. Now, this is all going on, this constant message. So most of us, myself included, I had two parents with PTSD, which pretty much ensures trauma and emotional devastation. But that doesn't matter in this culture because you had a private school. Your parents were rich. Your mother looked sexy. That's what matters. Now, what is that? Rich, appearance, intelligence, private school. See, these are physical symptoms, going back to that, cultural, thing. These men and women, without needing policing, without violence, without incest, without rape, these cultures that were decimated for gold didn't have this trauma, didn't have any of this. And they didn't have private schools. They had well-being at a rate of environmental consumption that was infinitely sustainable. Bamboo huts, this, that, and the other. But that was inferior. And so it's the same eyes looking that says, your son is having nightmares, your son is wetting his bed in terror, your son is hyperactive and cortisol levels are not able to go down after you're being physically violent with him. There's all this stuff. He's not happy, he's scared, he's lonely. Oh, that doesn't matter, that will pass. Look at his nice organic food. Look at his nice school. Look at this, look at that. Let's distract from the feminine inside the man. And let's focus on the masculine, money, appearance, etc. And so this was my message. Your feelings, how you feel, means absolutely nothing. You should feel this because you should be a chauvinist. Meaning, you should not feel anything at all about me beating you and hurting you and tormenting you. Because that's just emotional crap. And you're a man, right? You should feel grateful that you've got gold. You shouldn't be feeling remorse that you've raped and decimated warm, kind, feminine, and hospitable people with no interest in war. You shouldn't feel bad about that. You should feel proud that you've gotten gold. For God? God needs gold? No, for the church. You should be grateful for that. It's the same message. Suppress the feelings. But it boils down to one thing. We as men learn that our emotions mean absolutely nothing. My parents lied. It hurt like hell. Admitting the lie would have brought it down. Like I said I would do this for you, and I didn't because I didn't feel like it. And I'm not a very responsible parent. That would hurt like hell. But it would mean at least that we were together in the same reality. But my parents learned the chauvinistic game from our culture. So of course they don't say, you're absolutely right, this is shitty and I'm sorry. It's, you're ungrateful. In other words, let's divert and then let's look at material things again. So your experience of this doesn't matter. It's a lie. Now, that's just one. So then you go to school, all your emotions are asked, get those out of here. You have feelings, we don't want to hear about it. You don't want to be here, we don't want to hear about that. Shut those feelings up. Cage them in. This is a brutality. It's a brutal regime against the emotions. Lie to them, ignore them, diminish them, shame them, judge them, punish them, box them up. Remember, we're doing this to our inner feminine. Then humiliate the feminine. Anytime it shows up, if you cry as a man, humiliate it. Shame it. Punish it. Pack the pain in. So this is a systemic and systematic regime of torment, dissociation, ignorance, lying, betrayal, disgust, shame, bullying, violence, rage, denial, disgust, shame, etc. of the feminine inside each one of us. With such intensity, this is what happens with a child, is we have our field around us, and this comes in us with intensity. Now, it's us against the world at that point. So we push back, we cry, I don't like this, I hate this, I don't want to go to school, I don't want to learn this, I hate this, I hate this. And there's the pushback. Well, you need to go, please make me happy, etc. Go along with this bullshit. Please go along with this bullshit. For me, please. The whole histrionics, the games, the whole thing. And then if that doesn't work, then the parent gets violent. You are going to school, And so it gets shoved in. And at a certain intensity of force where you realize, you're alone. Your friends are going into that program. You're going to get tortured. You don't know what else to do. You're hit with these threats. You're not going to be able to get a job. No one will ever love you. Da, 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 da. Fit in, fit in. What we do is we internalize. We form inside ourselves the same messages that are on the outside are now on the inside. And we do this so that this part of us that's healthy and feminine will not fight off and get us in trouble with the entire cult structure that's been built up over thousands of years. And so we believe it. It's like, my emotions are shit. Why am I so upset that someone's hurt them? I am weak. I should hide it, not be angry that, someone's poking at me right here. I do need, wow, that's so uncool. I should hide that. And we play the game. We play the game by internalizing. We know we've learned the messages, and we've learned that we've got to invite, and then we learn that we gain social status. There's a reward in this for us. We gain social status, and there's a reward in there for us if we can be number one in the abuse. In other words, I was scared, I was lonely, I was shy, I didn't like being pushed into here, I didn't like, watching my best friend get bullied, I didn't like that I couldn't write poetry, I didn't like that everything emotional was shut down. I hated that, and I was punished and beaten and teased. And then I got on board, and I built some muscles. I joined the football, joined the football club, and did this and did that. And then the kind of the thing that kind of puts you out beyond the edge of reproach is when you attack and humiliate the feminine in your sphere. That's when the culture trusts you and elevates you. You're now cool. You're all right. You're now one of the tough guys. Now, and part of that is chauvinism towards women. Part of that is treating women, using women as less than for sex, because that's completely consistent. Using the emotions, the trust of the child, etc., for sex, for usury, for this, that, and the other. I'm going to make you feel guilty so that you'll go to school, because that's what matters. Your feelings don't matter. You'll thank me later, etc., etc. And there's this constant message. So a man, and certainly I, am absolutely clear that if it comes down to a question between what I believe is right, what I feel is good, who I am, and going along with this cultural program, it's a no-brainer. You go along with the program, or you get whacked hard, and you go along with the program really well, and you get rewarded. You get better jobs, better opportunity, more sex, more this and that wants to be with you, because you're up on top of the cultural power pyramid. You get more money, and that puts you, all this stuff. So this is the reward for internalizing the wound. Now, we're wounding ourselves. Meaning every human being on the planet has a feminine side and a masculine side. By internalizing the cult nature of our culture, in this deep imbalance, in this chauvinism, we are damaging and retarding. It's both. By retarding, it's like there isn't a single one of us who, if no one taught us to read and just threw some numbers out there and said it's simple, figure it out, would know how to read. It takes learning. This is an A sounds like this, A is used for the, it takes learning. And we put the time in for the math, for the reading, for the trig, for the this, that, and the other. We put in the time. When you don't put in the time to say this is an emotion, this is jealousy, this is a little different, this is envy, envy is this, jealousy is this is jealousy at 10%. When you add jealousy and anger and fear, you get this. When you add joy and innocence and kindness, you get this. This is what produces it at 10%. This is how they mix together here. In this kind of temperament, you mix joy and love and it creates this and shows this. With this belief system, you show it here and it shows like this. In cultures like this, it shows like this. Men tend to, in this culture, show it more like this. Women in this culture show it like this. Women in another culture show it like this. This is emotional literacy. This is stuff that 99% of us have never even thought about, let alone had an hour. And can you imagine being told to read in an hour? It's absurd. So we're actually retarding our emotional development, retarding our right brain development, which is about pictures, imagination, intuition, and all that. So we actively suppress the feminine. We actively abuse the feminine. We actively retard the feminine. We overemphasize the masculine. When I say overemphasize, it's a little bit of a stretch to say that we'll thank so-and-so that we learned trigonometry. I mean, I don't feel any value from that. You know, it's a little bit of a stretch to push that, you know, and throw up our hand, you know, the sciences are going down, when no one's protesting the fact that we're not getting a single hour of emotional literacy. It's absurd. So this is how the cult of culture treats our feminine and teaches us to treat our feminine. So then we come into this situation where for chemistry between a given man and a woman, you've got to have flow. Flow is chemistry. The higher the bandwidth, the more intense and multidimensional the flow is between two people. The stronger the chemistry, magnetism, you know, intensity, flow. And when it's positive chemistry, the stronger the value. Now, flow also is equivalent to sex. Meaning if you have sex without emotion, it's not half as intense as sex with emotion. If you have sex without imagination, without emotion, without thought, you know, it has its limit. You add in thought, imagination, emotion. Now, within each person, there is a masculine and a feminine pole. And flow happens when there's a message and a yes. I want to connect with you like this. Yes, that's okay. Or even better, I would love nothing better than to connect like this. Now, men and women both get the same message, that the feminine is less valuable. As a result, most women in America apologize for their feminine side. You know, I'm large sampling of dates and conversations in America. So if a woman bursts into tears around me, particularly if she doesn't know me very well, she's going to apologize. Why? Because she's being feminine. If she says something extremely witty from time to time and breaks into wit, she doesn't apologize because that's masculine. If she breaks into emotion, feminine, she will apologize, she will feel shame, she will usually excuse herself. And if I comfort her, you know, and say, no, it's no problem, she's abusing her feelings. She's been taught by men and women in our culture to abuse her feelings, to be ashamed of them, to be ashamed of sensitivity, to be ashamed of intensity, to be ashamed of shows of emotion, to be ashamed of needing anything, to be ashamed of receiving something. And so all the up and coming women, etc., are all, gearing up to how will I not need a man? How will I not need anyone? How will I be independent? How will I be more masculine than any man out there? And I'm going to be cool, and I'm going to talk more, and people are going to listen to me and not men, and this and that and other. In other words, I'm going to embody the masculine pole. But here's the problem. You get 2 pluses in a battery. You just get friction. There's no flow. So for there to be great chemistry and great sex, someone has got to embody the feminine pole. The question is, who's that going to be? Well, men are much more fragile in their ego and stuff. In part, we were born through a woman. A woman has more of a sense of transcendence in that way, and more kind of awareness of, just being able to move beyond self and let something new come through. Most men in a chauvinistic culture will want to occupy the masculine role, which means that the woman needs to occupy the feminine role in order for there to be flow and all that with that man. Now, it doesn't have to be. There are, I have a brother who's incredibly passive and feminine, and masculine, bossy women are very attracted to him because he will do what she says and all that. And one of the biggest jokes, is, some of those women who are very bossy and all that try and tell him to be more of a man, and do this and that and the other, but there wouldn't be any chemistry if he did, and they wouldn't have picked him. I watch who they pick. They pick the most effeminate man and start bossing him around, and that can include the hypocrisy of saying I want a masculine man. So she's going to, in this particular equation, occupy the feminine pole. What's the feminine pole? Responding, feeling, listening, opening. If someone says, hey, let's do this, and the other person says, no, I don't want to, that's 2 masculines. The feminine pole is, yes, I would love to do that. Love to do that. How and when would you like to do it? Well, I want to do it like this. And this is the masculine pole. I had an idea. I'd like to tell you about it. Tell me all about it. That's the feminine. I want to go and do this and with that, and I want to take you to eat, and I want you to dress like this and do this. And I'd love to do that. Let's do it. When would you like to do it? That's the feminine. See, and a man or a woman can play this role. It doesn't matter. But the point is, nothing will flow if there isn't a yes to what's being brought. Nothing. And so the woman is a yes, this, that, and the other. But see, here's the thing. This man has abused, shamed, and felt and been trained to see his masculine side as being superior to his feminine side. So for her to take the feminine position now means that he sees her as less valuable than he would see her if she took the masculine position. So you have a paradox, because if she took the masculine position, there would be no flow, no sex, no flow, no yes, no dynamism, no anything. If she takes the feminine position, there's flow, there's sex and all that. But he loses respect. He feels superior in the same way that he feels to his own feminine. Now, this is not foreign for the American trained woman, because while the American trained woman has been learning that she as a woman is as valuable as any man, she has not been learning that her emotions are as valuable as her thoughts, that her presence is as valuable as her possessions, that her listening is more valuable than her speaking, etc., etc. So she's learned the same chauvinistic program. She's just been allowed to play the masculine role. Basically, the whole feminist epic on one level has been, we have the equal right as women to be masculine. Okay? Now there's no flow, now there's no sex, etc. You've proven you can do it. You can talk as well as a man, you can lead as well as a man, you can teach as well as a man, you can vote as well as a man, you can write as well. You can do it. But your value is now coming from the same pole as the value the man is, i.e., I am as masculine as a man, so I am as valuable as a man. My masculine side as a man is more valuable than my feminine side as a man. The masculine side in my partner is more valuable than the feminine side of my partner. Which means that the woman has to have enough masculine energy that the man respects her, not for her feminine energy, but for her masculine energy, but enough feminine energy that he's attracted to her and that there's any flow and magic between them. But the part that is creating the flow and magic is denigrated, shamed, devalued, illiterate, meaning it's not brought to a fine science. And so one of the things that you get is this odd contract between the American man and the American woman in kind of current, and it's something like this. You need me to be feminine for you to be hot and aroused and love me and all that and connected intensely. We both know that that is an inferior position. We both know that if I listen to you and people watch us, they're going to say, why is she letting him do that? Why isn't she talking, blah, 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 because we both know that talking is more important than listening. That's the default assumption. We've all agreed that the masculine pole is more important than the feminine pole. So if I listen to you, my status is going to go down in public and this and that. So either we're going to do it, you have to treat me as a man in public, but behind closed doors, you can fuck me, you can tie me up, you can trash me, you can talk dirty to me, you can do this and that, but not in public, because my status would go down. But because I love you, I will be inferior to you in private. And the same can happen, in reverse roles, with the man being more feminine, etc., in private, etc., and the woman dominating and this and that and the other. But where the flow will happen is when the man treats his partner the way he's treating his inner feminine. Well, this is going to be a shitty way of treating. And this creates the split between the wife and the mistress, because the mistress, or the prostitute, is the man able to treat the professional the way he treats his own feminine. Meaning, you're shit in there, do what I want to control you, I want to use you, fuck you when I want this and that and the other, and then I want you to disappear. Because that's the cultivated relationship between the masculine pole and the feminine in chauvinistic cultures, which means that it's how most men of my generation and prior are taught to relate to their sensitive feminine side, to use it, lie to it, betray it, humiliate it, patronize it, the whole thing. And so all these little things, so what's going to create the most sex is when this relationship is externalized. So the externalized abusive relationship typically involves a lot of BDSM. Why? Because the internal relationship involves a lot of BDSM. Meaning, it's not sweet and loving to your feminine side as a guy to every time she emerges say, I don't want to be seen with you in public. Don't you dare let a tear come to my eye. Don't you occupy this body. Get out of here. I don't want to be seen with you. Wasn't this the same wound that a sensitive, joyful girlfriend coming up with her hulking boyfriend who's trying to be all macho, giving him a big warm kiss, and he says, get out of here. Don't do that in public. It's the same relationship. Why? Because she's embodying the same joy and enthusiasm that comes up with him as a boy. And he expresses it. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Dad. Get that smile off your face. I didn't want to raise a pansy, da-da-da-da-da. And it cuts down. In other words, the boy learns that he's lost all of his credit, all of his value to his father because he's allowed his feminine side. So what's the externalization? All the men around me, the real men, are not going to respect me if I allow my girlfriend to show exuberance to me and I respond. So I've got to shut you down. And then you have this whole conversation behind closed doors. I didn't mean it. I couldn't do it. Why? Why can't you do that? And it is absolutely true. The man needs to treat the woman exactly as he treats his own feminine. Now, in polite relationships, where there's no sex and all that, the man can treat the woman however she wants to be treated in the politically correct way. And there's no chemistry in sex. It's just a mental thing. What's needed? This woman wants doors open. This woman doesn't want doors open. Blah, blah, blah. I'll do it. But when you fall in love and you feel like we're one, that's when the man will treat the woman exactly like he treats his feminine. So you can actually tell exactly how a man sees, feels, relates to, and thinks about his internal feminine by how he treats the feminine principle in his life, which, when that is with feminine women, how he treats the women he loves the most and is closest to. Now, this creates a conundrum because this means that the best sex in a chauvinist is going to come from putting down and abusing a feminine woman out there in the same way as the feminine in here. That's going to create the best sex. But the idea of love the idea, is going to be the opposite of the best sex, meaning, you're my wife, I love you, you're the mother of my children, I want to be kind to you, I want to be respectful to you, I want to give you gifts, I want to, what do you need, dear? I want to be that. So that's what my head says is loving and politically correct. So if I do that to my wife, I've dissociated from her emotionally. I'm relating to her with my head. But the reason I've dissociated emotionally is that all my emotions are a mirror of how I actually treat my own feminine. Get down there, you piece of shit. Lay down while I fuck you. I'm in charge here. Don't you talk back to me. Don't do this and that, the other. I told you to get out of the way, and now you have feelings again. It's like, I've got to get work done. Don't you understand I'm going to look like an idiot? This is intense shaming from the masculine principle to the feminine principle that is the exact self-talk of the masculine trained to be sadomasochistic to the feminine in every boy in America. It's trained to be that way. By the mother and the father, by the culture, by the peers, by the movies, etc., etc. And so this is the actual dialogue, and this has real emotion. In other words, if the man will talk that way to his wife, then it doesn't feel like love, but it feels erotic because there's an emotional charge. There's flow. It's real. And so you have this tension where sex is the pairing and the externalization of the masculine-feminine principle with a partner, which means someone has to be the feminine. And the feminine in this culture is the abused, shamed, blah, 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 blah. So the person willing to occupy the role of the abused, shamed, trash, dirty talk, blah, 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 will be the one that elicits the greatest sexual charge because it's authentic. Not because it's right, but because it's an accurate mirror. So, the accurate mirror. So this creates a conundrum because the man cannot feel high sexual charge with this dissociated, I'm going to treat you completely different than I treat myself. It's a head game. You don't get sex from the head. So, what do you want me to do, honey? You want me to stick it in here? You want me to touch you like this? It's very mechanical. You can do that kind of sex. Yeah, kind of touch me like that. Do this, do that. And you can get that kind of sex from the head towards the head love of the head wife, of the head mother. But then at the same time, if the man has any sexual experience, he knows that that is not where he feels fully sexually expressed. Because what makes him feel sexually expressed is treating a woman in a feminine pole exactly like he's treating the inner woman. And that's where his fantasy will take him. You dirty slut, get down there. I'll fuck you and I want you. And so this will be an exact mirror of his inner dialogue with the feminine that is so suppressed and unconscious that it's not a fully complete dialogue. So a man can discover how he treats his inner feminine, how his masculine treats his feminine, and what the cultural program is by what produces the highest erotic charge. And then there's the question of what to do with that information. Because now you can see, okay, there's no way to reconcile the story. What do I mean? You, my loving, beautiful wife, the woman who's carrying my children, the person I go to church with, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to slap you. I don't want to humiliate you. I don't want to do this and that and the other. It just jars my sense of what a healthy, loving relationship is supposed to be about. The only problem is I don't feel like my fantasies are not taking me to you anymore. They're taking me to women who are not my wife, who are in some position of worthlessness, and a prostitute, because a prostitute is shamed by the culture. A prostitute by men and women in a chauvinistic culture are considered inferior. When it's like, oh, sure, you want to take a dump on a prostitute? No problem. Take a dump on your wife? What are you thinking? In other words, there's another class. But this is the class that somehow is the same value as the inner feminine. There's no mental clash. In other words, there's a certain, see, for some it's foreigners. You know, some American men will go over to Thailand or Philippines, and it's like, yeah, these Asian women, they're like animals. You know, they're not my wife. They're not a proper educated. So the partition is in there somewhere. For some, the chauvinism is around the college degree. Yeah, they don't really have a college degree. For some, it's around money. They don't have any money. I'm giving them a few dollars. I can treat them like shit, and they're not real human beings. You know, it's whatever. And so it will be with someone in that camp, a country that doesn't count, a woman that doesn't count, for whatever reason, the profession, prostitution, someone that doesn't count is the only one that can have the real sexual energy, that is the authentic sexual relationship, meaning I am treating her exactly like I treat my inner feminine. And so the bandwidth is very, very high because there's no cultural overlay of taboo. Now, in treating a woman exactly like the abused inner feminine, her essence and honor will deteriorate. You know, it's in very beautiful ecologies, you will find long-term prostitutes being some of the most wounded, hurt, protected human beings because they've taken the hostility, and on some level they know it's because they don't count in the person's mind who's giving it to them. So there's not an honor. There's not an honor of the role. You are giving me a chance to experience being the masculine towards the feminine and see what I'm doing every day in my own head, from my inner masculine to my inner feminine. You're helping me see that dialogue. And if I make you into a human being, I can start to see, wow, how does it feel? And the collusion on the female side, that's been chauvinistically programmed to devalue her feminine side. The collusion is a deep one, because the woman who really loves her man wants to give him the most sexual pleasure possible. So she wants to be the person who will produce the most sexual pleasure possible. And when the man says, great, I've got news for you. I want to whip you like this. I want to hit you like this. I want to talk to you like this. And I want to fuck you like this. And I want to do like this. And then once I've done that, I'm going to have lost all respect for you. I will want to fuck you like mad. And you will have given me extraordinary rush of adrenaline. And I will want to do it again. I will be addicted. But I'll think there's something wrong with you for going along with it. You are an inferior person, not someone I would marry. I want to marry someone for whom these thoughts would be disgusting. That's a real woman. But I'll come to you for sex. Why? Because it'll be the best sex. Why? Because it's real. It's the culture. See, because the culture is the lie. The culture says, on the one hand, treat your inner feminine like shit, and then treat other people's feminine, in your wife or whatever, completely different. And we are integrity-making machines, so it's going to be one or the other. And by the time the culture has brainwashed rage, hate, despair, loneliness, trauma, etc. in the man's feminine from his masculine, unless he does deep healing work to give all that shame back to the culture, that's who he will be towards the feminine in himself and to others. So that's really, the terrain here. And then you look at things such as pedophilia or all kinds of different things, and they give clues as to the age of the abuse. For example, the man that was shamed into silence at 6 years old may be drawn to 6-year-old girls because that was the last moment when he had his innocence intact. He's drawn to it just before. But the only thing he knows how to do is bring her into his prison of shame and lost innocence. He doesn't know how to get back into her innocence like he was before. Because one of the tricks that the culture plays, so the culture doesn't say school is chauvinistic. It doesn't say your parents are chauvinistic. It doesn't say our government is chauvinistic. It says you are chauvinistic. Our government goes over to Vietnam and burns men, women, and children alive for an idea. But we're not chauvinistic. Our government, is late. We give you a tax refund. We do it in a few months. This, that, and the other. We delay. We're completely sociopathic. But when we send you a note, if you don't do this, we're going to penalize you this, right, and left. Our government is sociopathic, but it doesn't say that. Our government cares more for the rights of large corporations to go into other countries and do various things that make us money, whether it helps those countries or not. But if you're being abused by your parents, just shut up about it and be a man. It's a sociopathic government. It's a chauvinistic government. It's a chauvinistic history. Our government is still racist. Let's just overlook that and tell them they're being whiners. And our parents and our school, we just talked about that. Let's learn everything about the head, a little bit about the body, that's a little bit feminine, and nothing about emotions. Doesn't get more chauvinistic than that. And then men, you're only a man to the degree that you are sociopathically successful and produce things chauvinistic. But is the culture chauvinistic? No. It's a complete double standard. It's a complete lie. So the man who fits in will be a chauvinist. The woman who fits in, the go-getter, the business owner woman, will be a chauvinist for the same program and the same reason. But it won't be talked about. So the culture trains and breeds and rewards chauvinism. But then it tells you it's a bad idea. And then doesn't do the math, You're told to learn long division and calculus and this and that and the other. But the culture is an idiot. It's illiterate. The culture doesn't rectify its balance. The culture spends $10,000 and makes $1,000. The culture is $9,909 in debt. But it doesn't acknowledge it, and it doesn't pay you back. It just plays it out and leaves you with the debt. Now, this then is the split terrain, and women train this sociopathic nature in men as systematically as the men train it. The disregard, the sociopathic look, the woman you fall in love with and are just this beautiful innocence around, and she looks at you as if you're shit. But then she looks at someone with bigger muscles and like, ooh, I want to be like him. She's a trained sociopath. She wants to look good, and she doesn't care about the feeling. The sociopath, the big muscle guy, he's not feeling that innocence. But she doesn't care because he looks good. In other words, he's more masculine. You're feminine. So you are less than in a chauvinistic culture. Now, there are some cultures that have been where the feminine elevates you, but not in America, and not in most Western northern countries. And so the women and the men are training themselves to be chauvinistic, meaning to value the masculine pole, the speaker, the doer, the initiator, the power over the money, the external, blah, 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 more than the feminine pole. Which means you're either going to get a partner who you highly respect and aren't very much attracted to, and it's more of a mental thing. We'll kind of stick it in there and this and that, and I'm with this important person, and you're important. Why? Because we're head of the college council, and you're head of NATO, and da-da-da-da-da, and we respect each other. But if we want to get really sexual, we've got to do it with a prostitute, because we just don't feel that. We're both masculine embodiments of the chauvinistic culture. And so the way to get to this is a couple of things. I think the first thing is it needs to be talked about. The second thing is it needs to be looked at compassionately. Men who are treating their feminine side like hell to survive in a culture that has treated their feminine side like hell are in absolute agony. Numb, dissociative, addictive, in trauma, in pain, in loneliness, sadness, scarcity around love, da-da-da-da-da. Men are also confused because they don't want to be monsters towards other men and other women, but they've been taught to be monsters to themselves, and it just doesn't make sense, the dual standard. Or there can be an envy. Why am I treating you as a woman in your feminine side so much better than you treat my feminine side? Why am I politically correct with you, but you're not politically correct to my feminine side? And you feel that that double standard works. It's just terrible. It's lonely, it's miserable, etc. So men are being left in this horrible place where it's becoming less socially acceptable for them to treat a woman the way their inner feminine is treated by their masculine and everyone else's masculine. Because it doesn't start, like men aren't born treating their inner feminine like shit. This is a trained, brainwashed behavior that is culturally sanctioned by men and women. Men and women treat men's feminine like shit. To such an extent that the only logical way for the masculine and the man to treat the feminine pole in someone else would be like shit, except when watching on Good Behavior and all that, which can only be kept up so far. But then the culture is demonizing men for treating women the way his masculine is treating his feminine, and the way the women's masculine is treating their own feminine, and the women's masculine is treating his feminine. So this actually is a cultural crisis on a much deeper level. You know, I have guilty women saying, I don't want you to think bad about me, but I'd love it if you raped me. You know, I just have this desire to be raped. Now, what's going on there? Meaning, it means